Welcome to the Positive Pen Podcast, where your stories and soul work matters. Now let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Hey, sorry about the interruption technology, obviously. I'm going to just double check, make sure that I'm on, because apparently it wasn't working, so I had to stop and restart. So if you happen to be one of those following the other stream, so I hope you come back. I'm sorry. But in the meantime, welcome to the Positive Pen Podcast, where your story, your soul work, and your creativity is important here. And that's really what we're talking about. A couple things I want to talk. This is my first time back in 2 weeks. I had a weekend off where we were celebrating family obligations. And one other thing is my son graduated this weekend. So there's been a lot of activities in my world. So it's been really extremely busy personally and professionally as well. So it's been kind of like a lot of work going on. A couple things I want to talk about. I know a lot of you have been following about my health, and I thank you. And if I got some good news today, one of the good news is I'm clear. So I'm off all the restrictions except for a couple of minor observation stuff. And I met the 3 mark. My lungs are clear, clots are gone, but there's still some, I don't know how you call it. I got some medical things I got to make sure that I do. And that's just part of the process. So I got another 3 months leg. So the 3 months critical stage, that was the most critical part of the health recovery of the blood clots and lungs, have been recovered. And I'm past that mark. And now I got another 3 months where really there's no restrictions. I can do what I want, whatever. It's more of a pain medication type treatment plan that I'm still on. And that's just to make sure things don't come back. And then obviously there's another segment of this where I go see another specialist or see a specialist about the history of blood clots. But really they're coming down to more or less that because I was down for 3 weeks, 3 weeks solid, that being rested, not moving was the primary reason why I got blood clots. And the way I recovered is showing everything to be that. So, and if you're following, and I'll be updating that story because I got a really cool story about this one at the doctor's visit. So I have to put it together, but it's really cool. In the meantime, let me just double check, make sure I got everybody going here. All right. So the other thing is today I have a special guest, Mary Baker, who we've been following each other, I think, for a while here. And one of the things that she brings is about community involvement, bringing people together. And this is something that wasn't really planned in the sense of me doing my community thing, but she's doing her community thing. And the cool thing is that, communities online is really important. That's how we come together. That's how we belong, especially these online platforms. And we were just talking back in the green room, and some of the things that we were talking about was how we kind of like parallel in some ways. Obviously, she's a little bit more of the helping the people overcome some strategies, some triggers, and things like that, and, improve their lives. But some of the things that she does is also very therapeutical in the way we do it and how we write things. So, for example, when you write, you're really being very intentional to remember some of the things and trying to recover and make sense of it. And then hopefully when you finish that, kind of gives you that, oh man, that felt really cool. It came off my chest. I finally got it all out. And maybe not perfectly, but at least it came out. And then you could always revise it down the road. So that's kind of cool. So no further ado, I'm going to bring Mary back in and let's all welcome her. Hey, Mary.
Hey, John. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, hopefully I did a good job introducing you and how we were trying to put this together. So just kind of give us a little bit who you are and, let us know.
Thank you. I'm glad you're doing better health-wise, too. That's really good to know. So for me, for the past, over 20-some years, I've been a counselor and a life coach. Not my first career. I was in business and marketing. But then I was more interested in what makes people work rather than selling them something. for example. And so that's always been a curiosity of mine. And then coupled with a lot of work on myself. And
Mhm.
so I was labeled the thinker, that statue of the thinker in grad school. And that was not a compliment because I would be sitting there in class saying, how does this work? Like, why do we do this? And
Right.
trying to connect those proverbial dots. So, what I love to do the most is help people bring their authentic self out into their world and to help people connect.
Mhm.
And one of the reasons why, and you and I were just talking about community, why I think community is so important is we can't heal alone and we can't grow alone. We can do some stuff by ourselves, and I think we should.
Mhm.
But we need to have safe spaces in order to grow and get that mirroring that we can't give ourselves. The mirroring back that you're okay. You are like one of us. And so you're not alone, that belongingness you and I were talking about. And also, you're not crazy. Like most of what I do is I use the word we a lot when I
Yeah.
do work, whether I'm working individually or I'm working with couples or I'm teaching or doing a group. It's like, no, it's not you, honey. You didn't invent this. And
Mhm.
here's why. And that's why I love what I do, because I try to help people figure out why they're doing what they're doing, like why they're coping. But the bigger piece too, and what a lot of people tell me that, like, how do you do it differently? It's one thing to theoretically say, well, I'm avoidant, I'm a people pleaser. I don't know how to come out and say what I need to say, or I avoid conflict. But then how do they do it differently? Like, what looks healthier? And we have to practice that too. So the community piece, it's not just talking about the thing, it's practicing new behaviors and getting that feedback.
That's probably the hardest thing we as humans ever have to figure out is
Yeah.
not that, I mean, we're not perfect people, and I don't think anyone is perfect. But you can't expect other people to be perfect because you're not perfect. Like, you can't just put that on everybody else. Like, everybody's got to come to the table as is, good
Yeah.
or bad. I mean, and one of the things that I've learned through my own experiences, especially through meditation, one of the things where I was talking to somebody about today, meditation. One of the things that I learned through meditation is people come and go, like noises come and go in your head, right? But that transforms out in the real world where someone who's very chaotic or very unsettled or whatever that is, and you're kind of like, whoa, that's a little bit too much for me. It actually heightens your boundaries more or less. It says
Right.
to you, like, because normally if you didn't do that, if you didn't have that self-reflection, I guess is what we call it,
Hmm.
you wouldn't, that would just be a normal circumstances. But once you have some alone time and you had some time to digest things and you kind of like see things in meditation, it kind of just lets that, you kind of go, oh, I don't like that, so you don't accept it, and then you learn the boundaries of those things. And I think life has a lot, we have a lot of noise out there. And I think
Yeah.
that's where we get confused on who we are as people. We're told to be consumers and to consume all day long.
Right.
We're told to you're a marketing person. That you are a product to the marketing gods. And you are meant to work, buy, and eat, consume, whatever, daily. And if we look at our natural being itself, that's never meant to be intent. That's not our purpose.
Yeah.
And I think that's where most of the confusion is. I mean, and then we get lost in the community because now we're no longer that like the night. I mean, I grew up in the 1970s and 80s,
Hmm.
I guess. I was more of a teenager in the 80s, but especially the 1970s, where neighbors were neighbors.
Right.
And I don't think we have that anymore. We have more of that consumption, right? And
Hmm.
it's more competitive and it's more, let's get each other. And I think that's where we lose ourselves. And so with your program, like when you do these community programs, how are people like, what's the what are the things you try to like, knowing all that? Is there a way to strip that down or get rid of that, or how do you approach it?
Wow, there's so much I want to say. Just said, I
I'm
think that
sorry.
no, it's good. It's good. It's like, wait, let me take notes. I these are just my thoughts. I think
Well, you'll
that
have the video afterwards.
okay. Um, I think that ironically, when we have people around us who have decent enough, no one's perfect, but like good enough boundaries, like
Yeah.
they have a membrane around the self, we actually can get healthy mirroring because they don't have any agendas and they're not blurring themselves with who we are.
Mhm.
So they can give us more accurate feedback. Like, hey, no, Mary, I thought that was great. That was really heartfelt. That was a really good idea. No wonder you're feeling pissed or excited or sad or alone, right? Um, there's also that me too, right? That belongingness is also I'm not alone. So
Mhm.
therefore, gosh, this is our like limbic brain, like I'm okay. I'm literally safe, right? And what we know now is you have to feel safe to do any work. And a lot of times being able to get people to join support groups that I've done in the past, the in person ones, they had to feel safe with me first. But they also needed to know that the other people in the group were just enough, a little bit like them, right? Because and Brene Brown talked a lot about this, where you need to find your people,
Yeah.
right? And the people that are where you are, maybe even personal growth wise, but also what's on their heart matches kind of what matters to you.
Mhm.
And you and I were talking about earlier, the hardest part is getting to that group. But what I love so much is getting people in a group and watching them help each other grow. I mean, I kind of just even sit back. Like I give the structure and I make sure it's safe. And say emotionally safe is what I mean by that. And then they can relax. And then when we relax, that's where our more authentic self comes in, just like with meditation, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You're observing, you know?
Like, is it more like, the question is always is, I mean, there was always this one I don't know how to phrase this. I'm just trying to figure. So, like, there's somebody in my life, right, who's very chaotic and
Mhm.
very impulsive, very trigger on past events. And, they go to this particular home, for example, and they're triggered by the memories of the past. And it's just, every time you go in there, and they don't have an edge. They don't allow you to have that conversation with them. They always have to be first in every single situation. So first in conversation, last in conversations, like kind of that kind of stuff. And apparently she went to a spiritual person. And in that conversation, the person said, "Do you love yourself?"
Mhm.
And I've reflected on that, and I thought that's a very interesting thing, because we're always asked, "Do you love you? Do you love yourself?"
Right.
And we're having a conversation um, with somebody else. I was having a conversation with somebody else, and that's where I got this information from. And the person said, "I don't even know if I love myself." And I said, "Well, let's just review this." I said, "Well, first off, you do spend a lot of alone time, which is good. And you love people. You love being
Mhm.
around people, and you let go a lot of stuff really fast, which is an admirable that's an admirable trait of yours.
Right.
That means you can get past things and move forward. But being by yourself and living with yourself is probably the hardest thing you can ever do,
Mhm.
without, because that means you have to start loving what you do and how you love yourself. And it took me it took me some time to figure that out myself.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that means you don't need anybody in your life per se, you know. Um,
Right.
so is the group more or less are trying to find themselves in the sense of loving themselves more, or is it more of like, or is it part of loving themselves but also realize there's other people? I mean, you mentioned that they're sort of like in that camp,
Mhm.
the same
Mhm.
camp. But do they come down to the realization that loving themselves first is important, or
Yeah. Wow. Yes to all the above, right? I mean, I think that part of the group is learning and writing and journaling and getting clear with yourself. Like my course, there's some little movies in there to help you resonate, and
Mm.
I put some humor and some lightheartedness in there to make it accessible, right? Because if you make it too clinical and overwhelming, we just shut the door.
Yeah.
And so they can start understanding why they struggle with what they struggle with. And they're not crazy. And here's why. And so they can start making sense. I think a huge part of self love is knowing that we make sense and we're not crazy. So you don't reject the self. The person you were just describing was looking outside, including to you, to be okay. To be better than you was to be okay, right? The one up, the one down.
Yeah.
And we look out there to be okay if we're not okay in here. And you're right, spending time, especially after you've been in a big relationship by yourself for about a year, is really good, because being comfortable in your own skin, and then you're right, you want to share your life with someone, but you don't need them to complete you, right? I cringe every time I hear that statement. They complete me. I'm like, no, no, no. Oh, can we talk? So the group, so the
I think that's
oh,
such a that's such a 20-year-old statement.
really, it really is. Well,
As
because
you
in
get
your
old,
20s,
as you get older,
developmentally,
you realize that doesn't make sense.
you're but we socialize everyone to go do that in your 20s. You need to find that person, then you're complete. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. But that's what sets up the midlife crisis down the road, right? Because
Mm.
I did this whole research project on this, and I did my own life around this too. Like, that if you do not developmentally find out who you are, like who you really are,
Yeah.
right? And what your gifts are, what your beliefs are, what your skills are, what you're passionate about, what you don't care about, what you're good at, what matters to you, and what do you want to have in your life. If you don't do that when we're supposed to do it in our 20s, right? Was it like 15 to 26? um, we we stuff it, right? We put it in a box, like we're good, we get the job, we marry the person, we get the kids, we get the mortgage, and then we're miserable. Then
Yeah.
that's why you watch people do crazy stuff like 180s, like the joke of the sports car and all this, and like, what happened to them? Well, they never got in touch with that person a long time ago, and guess what? It's coming.
Yeah.
And it's like in spite of yourself. So the group is there, I think, to give a safe space for people to talk about their shame, right? Because there's shame and guilt. Guilt is what I've done, but shame is who I am. And the hardest part about sitting in your own skin is rejecting parts of yourself, right? I mean,
Mm.
that goes deep, but that's what it is. And the whole goal at the end is integration, like all the parts of me.
Yeah. You know, I remember that when I was sitting by myself and I had, I had COVID. That was COVID time, quarantine, loan by apartment. Boy, did I had to be learning how to be by myself. I
Yeah.
hated it at first, and it was tough because you're peeling yourself at that moment because you're like now questioning everything that you've
Yeah.
done. You are, and then it just keeps peeling and peeling and peeling and peeling, and you're like, when does this end? And then you get to the point
Yeah.
where you kind of like, and I was very thankful. I was grateful that I started painting,
Mm.
and painting was a way for me to not to express myself. It was just a way to kind of get um, a way to just kind of like focus in my own world and focus on John and loving myself.
Yeah.
And I think that was a part of falling in love with John again. And that was probably the hardest thing that I
Mm.
had to do in that whole process.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Especially if we lose ourselves in relationships, in our work, being a parent, it's very easy to, right? At
yeah.
least in this country, to lose yourself. I mean, Europeans are like, mm-mm, you come first, right? And we gasp when we see that. They're like, don't even let a newborn get in the way of your marriage. We're like, what?
Yeah.
But here's the thing, when people can do that, ironically, everything else in your life starts to get a little better, right? When you start in here. And And I think also, gosh, you could take this in 20 different directions, but you show up more authentically, you have better connections with others. Because, yes, that time by yourself was really important to reconnect with the real you,
Mhm.
right? Because what happens is if we are in healthy relationships, and we're looking at that so much more now as we're understanding more about trauma and narcissistic abuse and all the toxicity and the crazy out there, is it can be like a funhouse mirrors thing, right? Where you, and here's the kicker, our subconscious is adaptive, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
house.
play a video game for 10 minutes. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Killing the game. At least
Yeah.
not, maybe that's just me.
No, I can't do video games. I get my mind goes crazy. I'm
Yeah,
like, what the hell is going on?
right.
I mean, when I was playing like Atari, like back in the day, that was much simpler. But today,
Right.
like
It's
the
different.
violence and all this stuff, I'm like, no, I'm not interested. No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're adaptive. And so that is why who you put around you, I think, is crucial.
Mm.
I'm a big environment person, which is why I think community is so important. And now we know we co-regulate with each other, our nervous systems as well.
Mhm.
Like it goes even deeper. Like the more we're finding out, I think the more it confirms for me that we're not supposed to be alone, but we need healthy people around us. And so that's something I help people do a lot, no matter how I'm working with them, individually or in a group, is who are you? What
Mhm.
are you about? And where are your boundaries? And, what do you need in your life? And start taking ownership of that, right? Taking personal ownership, then being really intentional about who you can put around you, at least who you put in your inner trust circle, right? Um, and ironically, the more we focus on what's within our control, we feel more empowered. The more we focus out there on nouns we have no control over, I think it was Stephen Covey talked about, then
The
your circle,
circumference of the circle. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Your influence of your circle, not
right,
out here. The more you're out here, the
right,
more your identity gets lost. Yes.
right, right.
Yes.
And
Oh,
and
I've been to
so
that seminar. Yeah.
back in the day, I used to teach assertiveness training. Like I come into your company and I do the brown bag, and do the role plays. It was great because, I worked on assertiveness a lot myself and, thought, but this is so important. This is so important. But what it taught me the hard way was I give them all the skills in the world and they couldn't do it. Couldn't go home and do it. And we would do role plays. And what always floors me is you get up there and you sit in a chair, and then someone in the group plays your mom, your spouse, your boss, your sister. And what is so wild but hilarious is they nail it. They get up there, right? And they're your mother, and they're like, "How did you know?" Right? Um, and
Yeah.
so we're all laughing and everything. And so, if you blow it, if you cave, if you backpedal, or if you lash out, you got to hand them. I get usually put an object in their hand. I'm like, you got to hand it back to them,
Yeah.
and they don't want to, but you're handing over your power. And
Mm.
so it was the role plays that was helping people somewhat. But then what I understood later and why I put my one course together is that there are pieces that we need to heal first because we have to feel comfortable with who we are bringing to the table, who we are bringing to the table. Right. And so if I don't believe me, how can I tell you my truth?
So that goes back to your point why it doesn't work. You
Right.
can give them all the teachings, but if they don't believe in themselves
Yeah.
or understand to heal first,
Right.
all that other stuff means nothing to them.
Right. And so I was working with people individually years ago, and then I'd throw them in like a women's group or a men's group, and we're talking about the same stuff, right? Like, needs and boundaries and beliefs and values. And I would watch them like take off and make all these changes. I'm like, what the hell just happened? And I started taking it personally. I'm like, okay, so I suck, right? And no, what it was is they needed 5 or 6 more people at the table to replace the family they never had. And I was just a good sister that loved them, but I wasn't enough. And it was it's always profound, right? I tear up when I even talk about it now. It's like to watch that, and I'm like, that's one of the reasons why we need community, because it's not a skill issue as much as it is a nervous system, like feeling safe, and a belief issue. Like one night, and one of the things we do in group is craft night, right? You put a bunch of stuff on the table. Or if we're doing it virtually, people just bring all their craft shit, right? Um, and you've met with these other people a couple nights. You kind of get a sense of where they're hurting, where they're struggling. And what you do is you have to create something out of whatever you have, paper, whatever, that really speaks to what they need. And talk about tears. It's like, wow, because then people are reflecting back like, this is what I think you need. I think you need a safe space. I think you need support. Maybe you need a break, you know? And that's all the stuff that we were all supposed to get growing up. But a lot of times we didn't,
No.
you know? And it's wild because in the trauma work now, we're looking at unmet psychological and emotional needs as a trauma issue. And we never did before. So that was a lot. Sorry, but there's just so
No,
much
no,
to it.
there's like, you've hit so many things, and I'm like going back to my head, and I'm like in my memories, I'm like, wow, yeah, now I know why those corporate trainings didn't ever work, because it was
Yeah.
institutional versus training.
Yeah.
We always fell back to institutional behaviors
Mm-hmm.
because the leadership never changed, and
Right.
that was the root of the problem at the end of the day. And
It is. Yep.
they didn't want to take ownership. Never want to take ownership.
So then
And
it
then
wasn't safe. Right.
it wasn't safe. No one wanted to do anything. It just wasn't right.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go through, either in a family situation, someone, you get into a family. A lot of families are just dysfunctional because of the environment that was created,
Yeah.
and I kind of go, okay, then you're out there on your own. For most people, you're out your own
Mm-hmm.
looking for a brother or a sister to kind of like help
Mm-hmm.
you need along. Excuse me. And you start finding surrogates, more or less.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yeah.
So just to kind of make you feel belonged into something.
Mm-hmm.
It never makes you whole, but you kind of feel belonged. And I guess that's where, yeah. I mean, that's so. We just touched here was probably the root of most of our issues in lives, and it's probably the hardest thing to accept.
Yeah.
Or to understand.
I agree. Yeah.
And that's probably why that's why I was doing the book club and doing these indie clubs and doing these podcasts with other authors, trying to get more of a community. I wasn't doing it as it wasn't intentional. There was no intentional mindset. It was more of like, I think we should do this because it will help other people, or like these weekly podcasts, we kind of went through, I went through a little bit of a stage transformation, and I kind of want to get back to where I am. And the reason why I really started the podcast was to talk to writers or people who were on Substack using this as a way to, as a healing process, or to get their books out there, or whatever they wanted to do, their art, all that kind of stuff. Because I think that's all healthy stuff. And and I gravitate to that because I really love that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the one thing I started to see, which is I'm very grateful for, is other people start reaching out to me and saying, how can we do this? How can we do that?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of like, okay, how do we manage that? How do we do this? Like, I'm not saying no to nothing, because I think saying no shuts down the opportunities, right?
Yes.
And if you're shutting down opportunities, what happens is, I'll give you a prime example. My son's like, I don't know, he graduated this weekend. And he's like, and I told him, I said, don't let the job stop you from moving. Let it go. Yeah. Do what you don't put parameters around it. If it feels good and you're going to get some training out of it, and you're going to go do it. And I've always encouraged him. And then he was like, the other thing he said to me, he goes, I didn't really learn anything from college per se. And I said, well, no, I disagree with you. Maybe educationally wise, you didn't learn much more than what you already knew.
Right.
But you got a degree. That's important. That's number one. But number two, you learn to be by yourself. You learn
Yeah.
to live on your own. You lived away from the family. You had no support. You did it on your own.
Mhm.
And you understood it's okay to be alone, and you're able to figure it out. And I think that's where, and you've built the community around it. You
Right.
found people to help you with resources and figure that out. You didn't have to call mom or dad or whatever to get you through it. And I think that's where, that's the alone time most people need.
Mhm.
And so I don't think he understood that quite yet, but I
Right.
think that's where his learning came from. That's where I was
Mhm.
telling him. It's like, that's where you're learning. Sorry, going from all tangents, but I was like thinking about
That's
all these things that happened in the last 2 weeks. And,
Mhm.
you know, the hardest thing is that I grew since January 1st. Like I grew tremendously from
Mhm.
different, like because of circumstances,
Mhm.
unfortunate circumstances that I didn't want nothing to do with. But it got me shaped up. It got me energized. It got me to wake up a little bit. I mean, I think we all kind of need that.
Mhm.
But then I also discovered there's a community out there that kind of needs something that if I can help grow it, that's where, I guess that's where it is. And I think you're doing something very similar
Mhm.
in your capacity. And I mean, we need community. I think that's the most important part is
We
community.
really do. We
And
need healthy community though, because like you were saying earlier, if we don't get in our family, then we go look for it in friends and stuff. But here's the kicker. Unless we know better, or unless we're extremely fortunate, which I run across that with clients a lot of times, like, man, you were lucky to marry them. Like, how did you? Because we put people around us just
yeah,
like our family because that feels familiar. Plus, it's here, right? Emotional maturity.
yeah, yeah,
Like you're gonna hang out like someone who's up here will say you're a really great person, but see, I can't do this. Right? Like
yeah,
they run very fast. Um, so so we replicate all that caca, right, from our
yeah,
family, and we're like, why does this keep happening to me? But we don't grow unless something awful happens, like you said. Then because I think our brains need contrast, right? Like, speaking of those groups I've done, maybe she got in the group and she was in an unhealthy, relationship with someone. She gets in the group and other people are like, "No, I think you're a really great person and you're smart and you're this and you're that." And after enough weeks of that, at some moment it clicks. I don't know how we can't control that. But she goes home and she's like, "Wait a minute. Wait, just wait a minute. 5 people, 6 people have no reason to lie to me consistently week after week. Like, that'd be hard to pull off.
yeah.
Maybe what this one person's been feeding me or showing me about myself is not true. But I also think, John, what I really, really think, and I think what can be at the core of a lot of people's anxiety is that internal fight between the real self and the false self that we put on to be what other people needed or what other people told us about us, right? Like, I'm the youngest of 5. You think I didn't get a lot right? And I was much younger than the rest of them.
I'm the oldest. I harassed her
Oh,
big time. I gave
mhm,
her a hard time. Oh my
man,
God. The
yeah,
things I did.
right.
Just boy. Mm-mm.
Well, it's all a fight for parental love, like all that
Yeah.
stuff, right? Um, because in families where you get enough parental love and things are better, it just, kids don't have to like beat on each other literally and figuratively. But
Yeah.
I was the youngest, right? And so not only did I was smarter because I observed like I don't want to do that, yeah, maybe do that, but I just think that it's really, really important to also create contrast,
Mm.
But that internal fight, I try to work with clients so much on, keep paying attention to what's hitting your radar, whatever that may be. And for you, it was like, I think I need to help these people, right? And I'm like, follow that because you know what happens. Once you address that, something else pops up on your radar and that goes away. And we're guided, and who knows how and why we're guided. I mean, depending on what you believe, the higher self, God, the universe, whatever. I don't think it really matters at the end of the day. I think it's, if you notice when you don't listen to that and when you didn't listen to that voice inside of you, right? When you look back in hindsight, I know for me, it's like, oh man, because
Yeah.
my intuition is never wrong. It's listening to it, right? Um,
Mine
and
says you're a dumb idiot.
it's not intuition, John. That's conditioning. Maybe. I don't know. It depends on what you did or didn't do.
Well, no, I just the health scare was like you're a dumb idiot. Forget where
Oh,
you're at. So and yeah, and that's was a lesson learned,
yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
But you're touching on some major things. So one of the things that popped up was so in an episode in Seinfeld, he was dating a bunch of people, and this one girl, I don't remember if you remember this episode where he sat down and the girl goes to him and he says, "I don't think this is going to work out," and he goes, "Okay, nice meeting you. Talk to you
Right.
later." And she's like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "I'm good with it. Like, it doesn't matter. You leave, something else that comes in. I, all of it's good. All of it's good, no matter what." And she couldn't handle that because obviously she was trying to hurt him.
Right.
And he was like, "Yeah, that's okay. You came, another person will come, not a problem." And I didn't really understand that concept, I guess, until, or I didn't really understand that concept or that scene until maybe 20 years later or after many years later, being home alone and kind of like
Mhm.
going through my own stage. And then I quickly realized no matter what happens to your life lives through you
Yeah.
and it's all good for you. And if you think from that perspective, then your whole life changes. It's like you said, you see a need, you try to address it. If it works
Mhm.
out, that's great. But if it
Mhm.
doesn't, that's fine. You've learned something along the process, and you may take that lesson, you move on to something else.
Yes.
And that's been happening more and more in my life
Mhm.
because I've taken a little bit of a risk. I've went down the path. It didn't work. Okay, let's make some adjustments, and now
Mhm.
let's go down this path, and it actually excels. And because now I guess it's more authentic, it's more you, it's more whatever, it's not whatever it is. And I think people resonate better with that over a period of time. Um,
Yeah.
and I think I don't say it's the trick of life, but if you can actually live that life, I think, and learn that lesson really fast and really quickly.
Mhm.
The one thing I told my son, I don't think he took my advice very well. I said to him, I said, and the first time he went to college, I said, he goes, "Dad, what would you suggest I should do?" And I said, "Look, son, you're going to go to college. You're going to meet a lot of people. You might find a couple girls attractive and you might chase them. But at the end of the day, chasing them is going to distract you."
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
said, "The first thing you should really focus on," and I said, I said, "Get involved. Don't marry it right away. Like,
Mm.
don't make it an official. Don't just let it be, and
Mm.
live your life. Enjoy college. Do the college things. Get involved in your community, whatever you do. Find your passion. But focus on you and focus on your career, and then all that will come as it will, because once because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, there might be a girl in your college that does that. You guys hung out, were friends, and all of a sudden it might be turned into something after the fact. But get yourself in a position where you're settled and
Yes.
you're focused on you, and you do it because you might be living in Alaska and she lives in you know
Right.
some town in Tennessee. That it's not going to work, and things won't work that way. And then you have to struggle. Do I need to be with that person? And
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
lose yourself. That's the other thing you were talking about.
Lose yourself.
Community is you lose yourself when you're always self-serving other people, and I think
Yes.
that's
Yes.
where people are trying to
Yes.
find their love and find their value is serving other
Right.
people. And I guess I was trying to teach that to my son. Like I said, I don't think he took that lesson well, but
I
uh,
want to hear that. It was a beautiful lesson. Yeah, you were telling him, hold on to you. And that way, when you are ready for someone, you have not settled for less than who you need to be and what you need to have in your life in order to be with them. Because I sit with people.
oh,
Nope.
you there?
You there?
Yeah, we just had a small connection
Okay.
issue.
Because I sit with people many years later who did that. I'm like, oh man, I can't help you. I can't help this relationship because you married the wrong person because you didn't know who you were,
Mm.
you know. And it's not your fault because you came from a family where no one was who they were. Like, how
Yeah.
are you supposed to know? Um, yeah, so I think, the core is, the work that I've always been interested in and passionate about, both, work on me and helping other people, is getting things straight with themselves. I think self trust and self confidence are it. And then you can be more genuine. And then, ironically, you make it safer for other people to be themselves around you.
Well, you're safer because there's no ego involved.
Nope.
Because when situations happen, it's usually because of an ego,
Yep.
or someone has past trauma
Oh, yeah.
that's unresolved, or whatever the case may be. Like, there's many instances where I say, 6 months, that's not going to work out. And typically, in about 6 months, it doesn't work out.
Hmm.
Or they'll last, like, you know, for example, someone gets remarried just after they get a major divorce.
Yeah.
There's no in between.
Right.
There's just they add the whole thing, and it just becomes like this big, huge blob. And it may last. I was I was told that it may last 15 years, it may last 20 years, but it gets to a point where all the needs are gone, and
Yeah.
when they start living with themselves,
Yeah.
that's going to be the hardest moment in their lives, is to figure out,
Yeah.
was it worth all this? And typically, it doesn't work out. Typically, I think there's a small percentage it does, but
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, and I think that's
Right.
where people don't sit down with themselves and kind of take the peace moment and just kind of like reflect and say, you know what, I could do things differently. I could be better at this. I can do that. And I think your community there is something that I think that people like, it's a self reflection. And so other people kind of not hold you accountable, but kind of just put you in a position and say, you're a good person, but was that a smart idea to do that?
Exactly. We love you enough to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, because like the example you're giving, it's like you don't give yourself time to grieve. And that's why people jump from relationship to relationship or whatever du jour, they backfill with, so they don't have to feel that grief, right? I mean,
But
that's what all.
grieving can also be death, like an actual physical death. If you don't allow that time to grieve,
Right.
it's going to be a burden.
Oh, yeah, you're gonna carry it with you, you're gonna leak it out sideways, it's gonna do everything. And so, I'm like, either I know for me, I'll just keep it about me, I'm over here controlling the crap out of nouns in my life, right? Not very well, or I'm sitting in some caca. That can feel overwhelming because you can't run. Control is all that running, like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
let me focus on you, new project, let me change this, let me" right, 180 this in my life to run, run, run. So either we're running and controlling, this is all fear,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's all that fear of sitting in the abyss, right? And if no one, when you were a kid, were developed themselves enough, aka grown-ups or big sisters, big brothers, um, to let you have your feelings and to grieve and to normalize that, how to do that. And if you have trauma, forget about it, right? There's no way. Um, and
Yeah.
so learning, I tell people, if you do nothing else in coaching or counseling, learn how to grieve. Because if you can do that, you can handle anything. But I also think that you're also more in touch with who you really are. Because there's that real stuff, that real vulnerable stuff. That,
Well,
that's
do you
surrounded.
really think like a lot of people don't grieve properly? Is there a proper way to grieve? I mean,
Yeah. I mean, well, in this country, we don't. Other cultures, they give you a year, they have traditions, the community supports you. There's the understanding that you need time, right? Um, Going kicking and screaming to acceptance is what I call grief work. Now, Kubler Ross's work is really important. It's not linear. She always said it wasn't linear, but it's DABDA. It's denial, anger, bargaining, depression and acceptance. And it's really about, okay, here's reality, and I'm just doing this, right? For me, it's a long time. Like, I don't like this, want to make unhappen, right? And then we're bargaining like, what if and if only? And we have to do that. You do that when you lose your keys. Like, come on. We have to do that, right? Like, why the hell did I do that there?
Why did
Sorry.
I do it? Why do I do this to myself?
Right. Right. And so talk about egos, because I run the universe.
Yeah.
And if I had driven that night, that accident wouldn't have happened. Or if I had done this, or if they had done that. And, you know, a lot of the grief experts say, yeah, but in some instances, yes, if he hadn't pulled the trigger, that person wouldn't be dead. Like, that's kind of black and white. But the rest of life is, you have no idea. But we're trying to make it unhappen because we're so afraid, if we accept that truth, that we are not going to be okay. Right. And that's what, you know, you talked about meditation earlier, that loving detachment, right? That impermanence and all that. When I work with people, I think there's three legs that bar stool. One is grief, one is boundaries, right? Because if you don't deal with reality, you're not going to grieve anything until you accept reality. But then there's detachment from the outcome, right? And we could talk all day just about those three things, and we won't. But
No, I mean, it's
like,
I love this topic because that's what I write about in most of the cases. Like, I mean, I touch on them, but I don't really. I mean, I don't go in the clinical part of it. Can I talk from a humanitarian, like a human perspective, like,
which is good.
which is, well, yeah, thank you. But so I kind of like talk from that perspective, and hopefully, and it's, you know, the funny thing, when I started writing these things, and I got on Substack, and I don't know if anybody really realized why I started writing. Well, number one, was to leave a legacy for my children so they can come back and see me. But I wanted to write to leave a beacon for people to read an article and say, you know, that hit, and I didn't think it that way, and thank you for doing that. And it wasn't intentional. It was more of like, we're missing this culture that we once had, like the Little House on the Prairie, the Waltons, the Barney Five type stuff, where it was about, you got a community, you got people loving each other, you got people kind of like going back and forth. But I was trying to resonate that back, trying to create something. I mean, that's what I was that's my goal, is to recreate the stuff that I thought that had family value, have some spiritual faith, has some inspirational, some whatever it is, because I don't think we got enough of that in our lives.
Yeah.
And that's really, so when you say, like we can talk about this all day, I look at that as like, I talk about it all day.
I do too. Yeah.
I mean, I talk in a clinical way. I talk it from a human, from the perspective, like, how do I craft this story that kind of makes a lesson learned, and how do I teach somebody that, and a lot of it is my own personal stuff or observations.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. Yeah. And that's my stuff. And I tell clients that I'm like, hey, you're not the only one, me too. Or I've sat with 5 people in this past month. We got to talk about this.
Okay.
This is something we're not talking about enough. Right. And I think you're creating accessibility and identification, which is why storytelling has been around for however long, right? There's storytelling, and then there's sand tray work, that I've used to do. I miss that. That's one thing I missed about in person, is did a lot of sand tray work, a lot of symbolic stuff. And what was wild in sand tray work is you have symbolic objects. You don't have just anything to stick in the sand tray, right?
Yeah.
And the treasure chest always resembles identity. And when people struggle with the wounds of self-concept, they bury that thing, man. And one client, like, it was at the bottom, right? And it's buried for weeks. And then what's wild is, as they explore and get their truth out there and heal, that sucker sits right on top of the sand. And then
they must have burst.
Yep. And so, you're saying, hey, this is just me. But what that does, and why I love groups and community, is you can passively listen to the guy next to you saying, oh my God, this is me, and this is what I effed up, and this is what I learned. You're like, oh shit, me too. But I'm afraid to tell the group, right? I'm not ready to share yet. But boy, I resonate with his story. And so you can
Well,
passively take it in because
yeah.
it's a lot better than the group looking at you and saying, "Are you looking at this, Mary? Are you looking at your lack of boundaries? Are you looking like the shame and the guilt that like that's going to impede our openness to growth."
I could tell you this, and I'll be quite honest. When I sat alone on those dark nights, I sat on the couch and I broke down.
Yeah.
And I went, never again,
Yeah.
never again.
Yep. Defining moment. Absolutely.
And when that happened, that changed. I said, never again.
Hmm.
And I learned my boundaries. I learned what to look for. I look for what,
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
I'm accepted to people. I understand, but it's nobody will ever, ever put me in a position where I'm defenseless. Never again.
Right. And
You know?
that created a core belief for you, right? And our beliefs drive our bus, whether we're conscious of them or not.
Yeah.
It's always like wise to get conscious and try to uncover them. And I work with clients a lot around that because it's so important. And you took your power back in those moments. Boy, it's when you fall apart, right? It's when you're falling together.
Oh, I
That,
hated it.
oh, it's awful. It's
I
awful.
I hated it.
It's
But
terrible.
the thing, so I'm a big cultural language, food. I coming from like when I go travel Europe and all that. That's where. But I also learn, some of the things that I learned, like love. I was learning about the yummy yamu in the Brazilian forest,
Hmm.
Amazon forest. I think that's right. That's 20 plus years. So I might be mixed screwing the name, but when you even look at the Native Americans, it was all communal in
Yes.
a lot of ways. The one thing that I learned this past week was that there was a consumer, like in the 1930s, just before the crash, or the 1920s. It was very hype. Everything was going well. Everybody was like buying each other, and everything was like, you don't need to grow your food. We got people growing the food. Like there was none of this effort of learning how to grow your food,
Right.
you know, be a lot more self-efficient about stuff.
Mhm.
People started becoming consumers and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But once the crash happened,
Yeah.
that lesson was lost,
Right.
because, and that lesson that lost, but there was part of America, for example, already had that. Even in Europe, there was already a way to grow your own food. People had farms or had
Mhm.
whatever,
Mhm.
and they were able to do that and get through some of the challenges because they were willing to work together, and families worked together, and they were stronger, and
Yes.
they were actually a lot more. So when we talk about community, I look at just that lesson I learned this
Yeah.
week. I was like, I got to write that somehow.
Mhm.
And that's because it speaks volumes about, it's not about, I don't, it's not about you entirely, even though you should focus on you first. It's what, like you said, it's like what you build around you, because, and it's that power of five. The five closest friends are the ones that are
Yeah.
going to lift you up, more or less.
Yeah.
And if you're a drug addict, you're going to be hanging out with drug addicts people, and you
Mhm.
never will get more than a drug addict. If you hang out with people that are middle class, which is great, but they don't have any ambitions to be better than what they were, construction
Mhm.
worker or whatever. They don't want to be like an owner or like that. You're not going to
Mhm.
ever grow from that. You'll always be there.
Right.
But if you hang out with business leaders, or you hang out with people that are more aspirational or who are creative and all that,
Mhm.
you will find yourself a little more inspiring. So obviously it depends where you're at in the
Yeah.
scale. And I think that's where your community always will change, I would think, depending on how you're leveling it up. I
Yeah,
think
I
that's
agree. And
right.
I think we level up and we can't help but when we grow, we can't help but outgrow. Like I joke with clients, man, if I told you that those like four people in your life are going to be history when you started really loving yourself, you wouldn't do this work. You'd say, screw this, because that's too terrifying. Because the one, right? But then later they're like, "Oh my gosh, where did all my people go?" I'm like, "You outgrew them. They were so unhealthy and you finally saw it because you need better and different around you." I agree with you that you just grow and you outgrow, but you aspire and you grow. Then you need better in your life. You need, not want, right?
Mm.
And I think that's really important for us to recognize. But what I've also recognized is we do not let go of anything unless there's another trapeze swing coming towards us. No one will leave an unhealthy situation, which is the other reason why I think community is so important, John, until there are other folks to grab onto that symbolize that need, like family, right? There's different things that our brains like, okay, well, that's not family, that's not my partner, right? And so we have to create places where people to grab onto. I mean, look, cults and gangs got it down, man, with the identity and all the things. I mean, and why do you think those vulnerable people, that's a whole nother podcast we could do,
Yeah.
other people sign up because they're meeting those needs of identity and belongingness and all that. And so we need healthy spaces for people to heal and help each other grow.
Yeah, that's the whole, like the mafia is based on that.
Yeah,
It's about the familia, and the familia means family.
right.
And it was, I came across where we were traveling back from my son's college, and we decided to take the scenic route. And it's a route that I've done many years ago, and I love this route because it has a little more nature and a little bit
Mm,
more, not so, highway driven per se, but it was highway driven. But there was a portion of this where we ended up going to, it was more communal, and we were able to stop and make some stops and here and there. But, one of the things you learn throughout the process of understanding, it's just there's communities out there that are so small. And we ended up this little village that was
mm.
created because this lady had a vision to save all the cottages or save all
Oh,
the
wow.
cabins in the area and churches and things like that,
That's so
and
cool.
build this little community out of in an apple orchard at one time,
Mm,
and started putting out there and created all these artists and all these, like, rent these space out and all this stuff.
mm.
And but in there is a community, and we just happened to walk in the church. It was I was telling Marie, I was like, man, I just felt like this was like the thriller of like a death thriller type thing where all these people are telling us like whatever, like,
Right.
you stay to eat, I'm like, oh my God. But and she goes, I didn't have that feeling. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm from the streets. Like,
Right.
things like that don't happen, right? So, but anyways, different experiences. Like, she had a different experience, I had a different experience, but they were
Yeah.
great people. They were very beautiful
Mm.
people. And I was like, in the back of my head, because I was thinking, where we're gonna be the meal.
Right. Where's the basement?
Yeah, but then we ended up with this one place, and I'm working on my heritage of my family, and there's happened this plaque of Italian family saying super sepra. It's a Latin thing. Sempre familia,
Mm.
always family, and yeah, that's what it is. That was, yeah, Sempar, supra. My Latin's gone, but it was always about the family, and it had all these pictures, and I kind of looked up on them, and I was thought that's kind of cool. That was kind
Mhm.
of cool. Like, they had a portrait of their whole entire family from
Wow.
these different villages. They were all
Mhm.
connected here, and I'm either the owner was a part of that, but they all were part of that region. And so even their community moved from Italy to there, and they still maintain that community sense of belonging.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And it's strange how Italians are more like that than others.
Mhm. Yeah, it depends on the beliefs that are, in the culture,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. And in this country, where our belief is individualism, and there, don't get me wrong, I think the hard part is finding the fine line between your own identity, right? And not blurring yourself with your family because that has its own set of issues. I work with those folks. Asian communities and other cultures that, that's one of the reasons that it's a strength and a weakness. So finding the middle between, holding on to who you are while still belonging to others, right? And having that sense of community and identity. And that's really important. And a lot of families don't know how to get that right, especially if they have the overlay of cultural identity too, you know?
Well, don't you think we're just more of a consumer society that's
Yeah.
driving us to be individual?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You were talking earlier, that works for the machine for sure. Because if we have our people, we don't need your product, or we don't
And
need
that's
as much.
and that's probably the spontaneous fill of gratification because
Mhm.
we were trained that you need to buy something to feel better.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
And I think when you spend time alone, you
Hmm.
start to understand that. And if you're in a healthy group, I would say, not
Yeah,
something that's, as we talked about different types of groups, some communities don't need stuff to be happy.
right.
They're very happy to be very minimal. And
Hmm.
and, and we see that with people going off grid
Hmm. Yeah,
because they don't need stuff. They don't want stuff. Um, and we see that more and more. It's just, I mean, just wish we had more of a sense of that. But again, when you reach your 50s or 40s, that's where midlife crisis happen. And that's where everybody breaks down and kind of like, what the hell did I do for the last 30 years of my life?
yeah. You have fewer years in front of you than behind, and you just had a health scare, so you know what this is like. Like you reorient yourself, and you're like, wait a minute, I can't kick the can on whatever, taking care of myself, doing what I really love, trying that thing I always wanted to try to do, being the person I always wanted to try to be,
Mhm.
And one of the things I love about this work and why I still do it is watching people transform is amazing. And like you hit a point where, and I can even feel it over the screen where just intuitively I can feel this shift into the real person. Like the real person walks in the damn room. And I don't know how else to describe that. But sometimes it just makes me like almost go quiet and they're like, "What? Is everything okay?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh, here you are. Here you are." Underneath all the defenses, all the trauma, all the shame, all the distorted beliefs, all the fears of being who you are. And what's amazing is to see the beautiful people underneath. And I worked, I was a criminal justice major after I switched out of marketing because I had to go from one thing to another. Don't ask.
You're just identity lost. That's why you're in identity crisis
I
mode.
know, really. And so I would sit with these hardcore lifers, right? These guys. I also taught in the jail because I was the only one that would go inside.
Mm,
'Cause my whole undergrad is you went to prisons the whole time, like whatever it gets old,
yeah.
just don't turn your back. But I acclimated to it, and I was actually fascinated, and I saw how wounded people were. I mean, yes, you have um, your sociopaths in there too, but I'm talking about the other people, and to see who they really were. Just I don't know, it didn't break me, but I was like, damn. And so that's why I went into counseling later because I'm like, I
Yeah.
want to get out ahead of this. I want to help people not hurt people because they were hurt. We're going to get needs met in healthy ways or unhealthy ways. And I'm not binary in a whole lot of stuff, but that's one of them. Like, if I need something, I'm either going to act out and get it met, or I'm going to tell you with emotional honesty and assertiveness, hey, I think I need this from you, or I think I'm feeling sad or lonely or scared. Um, and so I just love watching people start making their insides match their outsides, but we need safe places to do that work. And that's why we can't do it alone.
You talk about identity, just as simple as I'll just use my example. Like I had two brands. I had the Inspiral Art Studio for my artwork and all that. And that didn't really, I mean, it wasn't something I was driving. Then I had the pen, the positive pen,
Hmm.
and I had identity crisis between both of them.
Hmm.
And I was trying to blend them as one. And then I was a podcast, just I think the one last where we were talking, and she said, "Well, what are you well known for?" And I said, "Well, the positive pen." And she said, "Then go with that."
Hmm.
And I sat with it, and I was like, you know what, she's right. There's something to that. And so I created I created all these I remarketed everything. I kind of made it
Hmm.
more branded properly. And and I think that's what life is about, is trying to brand yourself. So not brand yourself in the sense of marketing, but kind of get your identity going, because
Yeah.
once you start get your identity in front of you, it's easier to represent that and you're not confused.
Exactly, because you're just stepping into who you are. I mean, I always think that, and my sister and I always have this conversation about gifts. I'm like, I think our gifts exist in spite of us, not because of us, right? It's, everyone already knows who that person is in the room, who's the good leader, who's the good cook, who is really good with people, who's a fabulous listener, right? Um, and it's really embracing, is what you're describing, embracing who you really are. Not that you're not an artist, but for right now, maybe the positive pen obviously is helping a lot of people.
I hope so. I
Yeah,
really do. I really do hope it's helping people. And
yeah,
that's where, that's why I love bringing people like you on, because I mean, even though you're not, I hate to say that's not well known, but you don't have a large account, but you
right.
have a lot of meaning. Like there's power behind you. And it's not because, one of the things I loved about you was you went there and you did your own voiceover. I can't do voiceover. I hate doing voiceover, right? But you had a beautiful voice. You talked
Mhm.
calmly. You were able to get it out. You did a great job on it. But that's like those small accounts that we do not see.
Yeah.
And I think that's because I was a small account, so I want other small accounts to get better. I get not better, but get elevated and get into the community,
To
like
reach more people. Yeah.
reach more people. But I think with your content, like, I mean, it's not quite like you write about stuff, you talk about stuff that you do and all that, which is great. But this other aspect, I don't think nobody knows per se. Not 100%. Like, nobody knows you're writing all these communities and all that. You probably it's in
Mm.
your writing and stuff like that. But
Mhm.
there's not a place where you get to sit down and have this conversation that we're having today and able to fully express, this is how I do it. This is why I think it's
Yeah.
important. And these are
Yeah.
the results we get. And if you want to be a part of that, that's great. Join me and I will help you anyway. Like, doesn't matter who it is. And I think that's where that's part of my community effort
Mhm.
is to create these conversations and have a platform that
Yeah.
is open to people to have these, like, because it's hard. Like, I don't think I'm a big account. That's not the concept. But I think that um, the concept that I was thinking about is that the more we understand, or the more we know, the better we understand what's out there,
Yeah.
versus
Yes.
chasing these large accounts that just, because the smaller accounts are just as important, I think.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think more people are attuned to my podcast, Own It Powercast. That's been on the air for a while.
Mhm.
And that's where I get a lot of people. I get thank you notes in December. I love that. I love the emails like, "Hey, Mayor, I have listened to this. It has made me look." I had to pull over one time when I was listening. Like, "I'm
Aw.
so sorry." I know. Or my friend said the other day, she's like, "How do you always freaking know?" She goes, "I heard the latest one, and I'm like, had to put everything down and sit down and listen to it." It's exactly where I was.
Yeah.
So that's a community, but I want them to do the coursework, because listening is one thing and it's great. Can passively take it in and say, yeah, that's me. And I'm not crazy. But I think the next step, the brave step that you and I were talking about in the green room, is then joining. The hardest part, 100%, is just showing up. Once you're there, it's good, right?
Yeah. So that's so important. If you And I wrote this today about my article was about, I sometimes when I write stuff, I post them, I schedule them out, and
Mhm.
sometimes it's a surprise to me.
Great.
It's not intentional. It's just like, oh, I wrote that. Oh, I
Yeah,
totally forgot about that.
that was
Because I
my
usually
Tuesday
try to
self.
write in advance.
Yeah.
So I wrote about today's about change and learning to step forward and to. And by the way, it wasn't correlated to this because it happened to be whatever. Because your article was published on March 5th, which was like, and I tried to fix it. I couldn't get it going. I was like,
It's all good.
oh,
People
whatever.
must have needed it in March, John. You know.
But March needed more than you did.
Hmm.
But you sat there and you think, change is the hardest thing to accept. That's number one. Number two,
Right.
moving forward, even knowing not to, like, you have to trust whatever is going to happen next is going to get the benefit of you, but also initiating the need, like, taking that, like, if you know there's a issue that you're trying to resolve,
Right.
asking for help or going seeking help is probably the hardest thing to accept because we're always told that you're good enough as it is. You need to figure it out on your own. Like,
Right.
Gen Xers,
Mhm.
it's just little blood. Move on.
Yep. It's okay.
Why are you crying?
Walk. Right.
Get out. Let's go.
Yep.
Um, but that's where people need to. I mean, asking for help is probably the hardest thing to do.
It's also if you've asked for help in the past and that didn't go well, fell on the floor, someone blew it, someone really just was too selfish or whatever, you have that in your head, along coupled with the belief, like you talked about, like there must be something wrong with me if I need help,
Yeah.
you know? And so self-reliance is great, but to a point, you don't really grow until you lean a little bit on other people appropriately. You know, I'm a believer of experiential learning.
Mm.
I think, especially if you have anxiety or you don't like change, experiment with something. Can't experiment with everything, but you can try some things. Like maybe I'll speak up or do better eye contact with people this week, let's say. And what you get to do is see how that goes. And if it sucks, you can just go right back to where you were.
Yeah.
Like, "Yep, see, that doesn't work." But guess what happens? You try it, maybe you get some good feedback, and you're like, well, I want to tweak this part. I want to change this part. And all of a sudden, you own it. All of a sudden, it's not something out there to be terrified of.
Mm.
It's something you're choosing around. Like the book that will come eventually is How Do We, I know, how do, I should never have told you that. How do we get
I'm
from
just
your,
silent. You're not. You know how many people I talk to that says there's a book coming, but
I
I don't
know,
know when it's going to come
I
out. I'm
know,
like,
right.
geez, just write it and get it out.
I got
Sorry.
the course out. Isn't that good enough, John? Um, but it is really about, how do we get out of fear and into choice? And now well, I think maybe I didn't write the book because damn it, the neuroscience is just now caught up,
Oh,
moving from your limbic system to your prefrontal.
yeah, that's the problem, right there.
It is. It
No,
is.
I'm making it funny.
I'm
That's
pissed because
crazy.
I could have made a lot of money like 10 years ago because I already knew that, but whatever. No, um, but no, I'm really, really grateful because now the science is there to back it up. Because I had
Yeah.
people like prove it, all my engineers. I'm like, okay, here's the science.
The
Um,
engineers.
but if you
Science engineers.
experiment, your brain cannot argue with experiential data.
Right.
It's real, man. I just did that. No one died, including me. It was actually kind of good.
Mm.
And then you expand slowly. So I'm a big fan of Nathaniel Branden. He's gone. He was a big self-esteem guru and personal responsibility guy in the 60s, hence the name of my podcast. He said, here's your self-concept. And anything someone gives you promotion and puts it outside of there, if you can't see yourself as doing that, you're going to sabotage the crap out of it. And you're going to be right back here. So what
Absolutely.
I'm a believer of is it's like the detour to work. At first it's stressful, but then eventually you're going a different way and then you expand this and you don't even notice that it's happening,
I agree with that.
you know?
I
And
remember.
then
I
you
remember.
change.
I remember that point when I was started painting. I always wanted to paint, but I had a fear of failing.
Mhm.
And the opportunity came, just happened to be there, that I met this person her name was Karen, and she was an older lady who retired and just started to teach people how to paint. And she was an
Mhm.
artist herself. And I went to her and I said, well, can you teach me how to paint? And and to do that was hard to
Yeah.
ask.
Yep.
And number two for her was like, okay, what do you know? Right. And so it was like all from scratch. But if I didn't take that opportunity,
Right.
I would never discover something completely different about myself. If
Exactly.
I would have walked into that with the resentment attitude of, this is not for me, I'm going to be an idiot. But I think a lot of that, you have to be ready. Isn't that most of it, is to be ready?
Absolutely. We are ready when we're ready, not a nanosecond before. So I tell people, do what you're ready to do because you don't know where that's going to lead you. We do know that growth begets growth, the Diderot effect. Like paint one room in your house and tell me what happens, right? You're going to go around the rest of the house like, oh man, now the living room looks, old. And so it'll take care of itself. And so all you got to do is show up with that first thing on your radar and go that way. And I think the self is guiding you. It
Right.
is. I think I've sat with enough people over enough years to gather the data to say that's true. And you just start there. And confidence comes and empowerment comes from doing, from doing. And experimentation is great because then you don't see, if you commit, and commitment can mean failure. Like you said, what if I fail? But what if I experiment with painting? How does that sound? I can just play around with it, see what happens. We let go of the outcome, we let go of control, you know?
That's what I did with writing. Initially, it was like,
Mhm.
no one's going to read this. This looks stupid. I mean, I had a list of things. I was like,
Right.
this is like, why am I doing, like, no one's going to, like, this doesn't make sense. Why am I doing this? And, the phobia of having dyslexia, all that kind of stuff. And all that all the
Mm,
back stuff that, the grade 7 teacher telling me I'll never amount to anything other than a dishwasher. I mean,
Jesus.
just add
People.
on the insults, all the
Yeah.
stuff that came. But again, that's the 70s. I was raised in the 70s, so it was a different world.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm not going to say that it was all bad, but you had that stigma. And if it didn't happen to be that one teacher, the professor at the University of British Columbia, that sat down with me and says, "You're okay.
Mm,
I mean, let's figure this out together."
mhm. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So the irony is we have no power over other people, but boy, can we influence people and change their lives.
Yeah. Just imagine if one person believes in you.
One
One
person.
person. And I
Yeah,
actually posted it on my notes. I was like, just imagine one person believes in you. And what's the ripple effect of that?
exactly.
That could change the projection of that person completely.
That's why at the end of my podcast, I say, pay it forward, man.
Hmm.
We're here to help each other. It's really important.
Mary, this is a great conversation, and we can go on and on. I mean, this has been very moving, a little bit emotional for me. I mean, I
Mm.
don't know if you noticed it, but it was. But how do people get a hold of you?
So I have a Substack here, Soar with Mary. You can find the course at findyourvoicecourse.com. The podcast is Own It Powercast. It's everywhere you get your podcasts. And so there's plenty there to listen to. I got lots of people out there binging right now. I looked the other night, I'm like, oh, girl, you had a lot of time on your hands this weekend. But I love it, right? Because they're
Yeah.
learning and they're growing. And they can always reach out to me on social. I do return messages, genuine messages. And I think that relationship first, everything else second.
I agree.
I'm here to talk with you about what do you think you need? Where are you? What are you struggling with? And let's get you started so you're not alone. Get you growing. I just don't think anything is put on our heart for no reason. So
Mm.
if you think you're ready, then you probably are. And just trust that.
Well said. Um, Thank you. I appreciate your time. Carl had a good statement. He said that nobody's road is perfectly straight. So many bends along the way. People help us. So I just wanted to share that.
That's
In the
beautiful.
meantime, thank you for taking your out of your busy schedule. I know you're a very busy person, and thank you for your time. And if you happen to be on podcasts, look her up, subscribe. It helps the content. It helps push it out there for other people to listen to. So thank you everybody out there for who all joined, and we'll see you next week. I'll be still on, and so, and I don't know who the next guest is, so it'll be a surprise for myself too. So thank
Thank
you,
you, John.
Mary.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
it.
much for having me here.
You're
This was
welcome.
great.